Hi, everyone. I'm Jess, and I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Course Report is the resource for helping people find the right technical skills boot camps and courses for them. At Course Report, you can research the best boot camps and programs from all over the world, find out which technical skills to learn, where to apply, and how to fund your own boot camp or program experience. Today, I'm so happy to have two 4Geeks Academy graduates, Trevor Cordum and Kelsey Lowe, who are going to be showing us what they recently built in 4Geeks Academy's data science bootcamp. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Kelsey and Trevor. Before we dive into your data science project, I'd love to know a little bit more about what got you into data science this year. So Trevor, what inspired you to get into data science?
Well, thank you so much for having us. And to start out, so I originally came from a film background. And for a long time, I didn't even realize how much I was drawn to the analytical side of the industry. I was always fascinated by box office numbers and how some movies would exceed expectations while others underperformed despite big budgets or A-list talent. So I found myself constantly looking at trends and comparing production costs and casting choices and marketing strategies. So to see how they impacted a film's overall success. And at the time, I didn't think of it as data science. I just thought I was deeply invested in the business side of film. But looking back, I was essentially trying to build mental models for box office projections without even realizing it. And, well, that curiosity naturally translated into my interest in data science.
And Kelsey, why did you decide to go from software engineering to data science now in 2025?
Yeah, over the last few years, I've kind of seen the need for software engineers sort of grow a little bit stagnant and kind of decrease. While data science and particularly machine learning has really been kind of booming. So it felt like a really good time to just invest in growing my skill set and trying to learn a little bit more about these new technologies.
Trevor, there are so many data science boot camps out there now. So why did you end up choosing 4Geeks Academy? Like, was their job guarantee a factor in your decision?
Well, yes, definitely. The job guarantee was definitely a factor. But what really stood out to me was 4Geek's strong reputation, because I'm someone who does deep research before making any decision. And 4Geeks was no different. I went through Reddit threads and online reviews and community discussions. And everything came up pretty clear that it's a rigorous, challenging program with mentors who are also there for you long term. The lifetime commitment to helping graduates succeed in their careers and being a continuous resource was also a very huge factor for me. Plus, knowing they stand by their graduates with a job guarantee only reinforced my decision.
And Kelsey, just overall, what did the data science bootcamp curriculum cover at 4Geeks?
We went through quite a bit. So we certainly started with, a lot of the fundamentals, kind of just basically learning Python and using algorithms. We studied like probability and statistics, linear algebra, how that all really relates to data science. And then we really got to dive into like exploring databases and then ultimately manipulating and visualizing data. So we learned how to use a lot of the basic Python libraries. So everything from, NumPy to scikit-learn. And then finally, we got to do kind of the pinnacle of it all, which was learning predictive modeling. We learned quite a few different types of models, everything from regression to language processing and time series. So a really good variety and a good base there. And then we kind of briefly just touched on deploying projects before we sort of put all of that together for a final project.
Wow, that really runs the spectrum of data science. So Kelsey, what is the name of your project that you built for 4Geeks, and like what is the main problem that it's hoping to solve?
Yeah, so we call our projects just the U.S. Natural Disaster Predictions. And it's intended to take the top 5 most common natural disasters that occur in the U.S. and sort of predict the annual probability of those disasters occurring. And our hope for this project was to really kind of better prepare communities and better allocate disaster relief resources using these predictions.
Very cool. Trevor, how much time were you actually given to build this project? It seems like a pretty big project.
So yes, building this project, I believe we had a little over a month, maybe about 6 weeks. And a good portion of that was also deciding on what data set and what the project that we wanted to choose actually was. So overall, I would say about 6 weeks. And after we established which data set that we wanted to be able to use, me and Kelsey were hit the ground running.
Awesome. So Kelsey, why don't you walk us through some of the main features of this project?
Yeah, so we ended up using a logistic regression model. We tried a couple of different models, and this was the one that we ended up with the best accuracy out of. And essentially, we just use that model. We go ahead and we can enter whatever year we would like. So I'll go ahead and enter 2030. And then again, we have our top 5 most common disasters in the US. So here we have our predictions for the year 2030 for tornadoes. And we just sort of have a nice little heat map here, which we used JavaScript and D3 to kind of build this out. And it shows us that, as you can kind of expect through here, we have a higher concentration of tornadoes. If you hover over any individual state, it'll give you an actual percentage risk of that natural disaster occurring within that state. And then we also have a little bar chart down here so that you can kind of just get a quick overview. You can see that like Idaho is probably at the least likelihood of experiencing a tornado, whereas Oklahoma has the highest risk at over 20%.
Very cool. And Trevor, what were some of the main programming languages and tools that your team ended up using? I know Kelsey just mentioned JavaScript was one of those.
So we use NumPy and Pandas to process the data, and Matplotlib to visualize our exploratory data analysis, or our EDA. And one major insight that stood out was that Hurricane Katrina was drastically skewing the data set. And since nearly every surrounding country declared an emergency, the events created an overwhelming spike. So to balance the data, we grouped Katrina as a single event rather than counting each declaration separately. And another outlier was COVID-19, which caused an extreme surge in disaster declarations. But since it didn't align with the typical natural disaster patterns, we decided to remove it entirely. And as we continued analyzing the data, we noticed a long list of disaster types, but many had very few occurrences. So to improve model accuracy, we focused on the top 5 most frequent disasters instead. And working with the data set was really fascinating. It became clear that the same data could tell completely different stories depending on how we approached it. And there were endless possibilities for analysis, making it an incredibly engaging challenge.
Wow, I love that you thought so deeply about the different types of outliers that could be there. So Kelsey, did you end up using everything you learned at 4Geeks to build this project with Trevor, or did you both pull in any kinds of new technologies that you hadn't learned in the bootcamp?
A little bit of both, absolutely. We definitely used everything that we learned at 4Geeks and then had to learn some new things on top of that. In particular with the data encoding, because we were working with a multi-label classification problem, we had to really go and learn a lot more about data encoding and how we could, kind of manipulate that data to give us the output that we were looking for. And then also using different types of models. So we really thought that using an LSTM neural network model was going to be kind of our best bet for the type of data that we were working with. And we spent a lot of time learning about that and trying to get a high percentage of accuracy out of that. At the end of the day, we still ended up getting the best accuracy with the logistic regression model, but it was, ultimately a really cool experience to learn something, above and beyond what we learned in the course.
Trevor, I'd love to know what you thought the biggest challenge was in building this. You mentioned already having to figure out what those outliers were in the data.
Well, a thing that was kind of strangely ironic was while working on my natural disaster prediction, I live in California, in Los Angeles specifically. So I found myself in an oddly relevant situation because I was experiencing the wildfires while analyzing historical natural disaster data. So, I mean, outside the air was hazy with smoke and there's emergency vehicles driving all over the place, while inside I was sitting here focusing on trying to build a tool that could anticipate these very events that were happening outside. So the situation made the project feel way more practical. It wasn't just about training a model. It was about understanding how data can help with preparedness and response, because every air quality alert and food or road closure served as a reminder of why predictive analysis is very important. Because once the fire had passed, I still had walked away at that point with more than just a completed project. It reinforced why this kind of work matters. And not just as an interesting technical challenge, but as something that could provide real world value in helping communities plan for natural disasters more effectively.
That's such a good point. And wow, what an experience to build this, like you said, during the California wildfires of this year. So Kelsey, did you end up with Trevor demoing this at 4Geeks Academy?
Um, yes and no. Unfortunately, for our kind of big demo day where we invite our mentors and our family to come see it, we had a scheduling conflict, so we weren't quite able to do that. But we did do like a practice demo day where we did get to show the software engineering cohort, as well as our classmates, the project that we had been working on, as well as our program manager. So that was a really fun opportunity to show off what we had been doing.
Trevor, do you anticipate using this project for any future tech job interviews?
Oh, absolutely. This project is a great representation of data science skills, from data pre-processing to machine learning, time series forecasting. And I think it showcases my ability to work with real world messy data sets and handling imbalanced data, apply advanced modeling techniques like LSTMs. Plus, natural disasters are a high impact area where predictive analytics can make a real difference, which makes the project both technical and socially relevant. So I'm hoping in future tech job interviews, I can use this project to demonstrate my problem solving approach, how I tackle challenges like overfitting and data imbalance, and my ability to communicate complex findings in a clear, actionable way. I think it's a strong portfolio piece that highlights both technical and analytical abilities. So yeah, I definitely see myself using it as an example in interviews.
And Kelsey, what types of tech roles do you feel like 4Geeks Academy prepared you for? Will you be applying for like more data science jobs now, or are you thinking software engineering still, but like with this niche understanding of data science?
I really enjoyed the kind of storytelling element that came out of learning how to work with data. So I certainly want to be looking at roles as like a data scientist, potentially even a data analyst, or a machine learning engineer.
And Trevor, what about you? What types of roles are you applying for now?
The type of roles is mainly data science, but I am very fascinated on all ends of the spectrum of with data engineer and data analytics. I would like to be able to have a full scope, because it would, if nothing, I would like to be able to communicate with all the different branches so we can all work on every which level of the data journey.
I'd love to ask you both, at this point in your career journey, was 4Geeks Academy worth it for you? So Kelsey, let's start with you.
Absolutely. I think in particular, just having an experienced and knowledgeable mentor really is incredibly invaluable. I feel that I learned things that I just couldn't have done through independent study.
And what about you, Trevor?
Oh, definitely. 4Geeks Academy was full of deep dive into data science. It wasn't just surface level learning. It was an intensive, fast-paced experience that required a lot of focus and adaptability. I mean, every week we were switching gears and tackling different aspects of data science, from machine learning and deep learning to time series forecasting and NLP. So the constant shift forced me to learn how to manage multiple concepts at once, a skill that is directly translates to real world data science work.
The interest in data science and machine learning just continues to grow. And I know 4Geeks will have more people interested in their program. So I'd like to ask both of you, what advice do you have for incoming data science bootcamp students? Like, is there anything that you wish you knew before day one of the bootcamp? Trevor, let's start with you.
Yeah, my biggest advice for incoming students is to get a little familiar with coding and Python before starting, because you don't need to be an expert, but doing some online tutorials will help so that everything isn't just completely over your head in the first few weeks. And also definitely expect to struggle. And that's okay, because everyone falls behind at some point, and everyone makes mistakes and everyone has moments where they feel lost. But the key is to just keep pushing forward, because things that don't make sense at first will begin to click as you go. So just be diligent and put in the effort and just trust the process. Because most importantly, don't get discouraged by failure, because we all failed multiple times and that's just a part of learning.
Hey, Kelsey, what about you?
Yeah, I agree entirely with everything that Trevor said. Certainly on the technical side, if you don't have experience with coding, just getting a little base understanding of using Python is really helpful off the bat, so you don't feel overwhelmed, as soon as you jump in. And then on the more personal side, just really having a clear understanding of your motivations for taking the course. I think that really keeping those intentions in mind help you kind of persevere through those sort of challenging fundamentals that you learn at the start. And once you stick with it, that all really comes together, and it's incredible when you see how it all applies to data science.
Well, that's a perfect place to wrap up this Q&A. Thank you so much, Kelsey and Trevor, for walking us through your really relevant, awesome project. And thanks so much to all of you who are watching. We're going to be posting a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for 4Geeks Academy, just in case you're inspired to apply for one of their upcoming cohorts. And in the meantime, please follow Course Report on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. And if you're a Bootcamp alum, don't forget to post a review of your Bootcamp experience on Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone who's thinking of getting into tech today.